The auction hall was filled with noise. Voices of many aliens echoed under the high ceiling. Some shouted bids, some laughed, and others argued about prices. The smell of oil, sweat, and fear mixed together. Heavy cages lined the floor, each holding someone waiting to be sold. One by one, the cages were dragged out. A loud auctioneer shouted numbers. His sharp voice carried across the crowd. Buyers raised their hands, coins clinked, and chains rattled. Each slave was sold quickly, some for work, some for entertainment, and some for cruel reasons. The crowd grew louder as the last cages emptied. Only one cage remained at the far end of the hall. Inside sat a thin girl, her hair tangled. Her skin marked with scars, she did not lift her head. She sat still, staring at the ground. Her silence made her look broken. The auctioneer banged his staff against the floor. "And here we have the last one," he called. His voice carried mockery. "Too weak for labor. Too scarred for display, she is worth nothing. But maybe someone wants a toy." The crowd burst into laughter. A lizard-skinned merchant spat on the ground. "Trash," he hissed, another alien shouted. "Not even worth a drink of water." The voices stung the air like whips. Still, the girl did not move. She had heard these words too many times. The auctioneer shrugged. "If no one wants her, we will throw her to the pits." His words were cold. For the crowd, it was nothing unusual. For her, it meant the end then, from the shadows near the back. A voice spoke, calm, steady, and different. "I will take her." The crowd turned. Whispers spread quickly. It was a human, middle-aged, his face lined with experience. His clothes were plain, but his eyes were sharp. He stepped forward slowly. The auctioneer blinked in surprise, then laughed. "A human wants this worthless thing? You must enjoy broken toys." The crowd laughed harder. Some slapped their knees, others hissed insults, but the human did not smile. He placed a pouch of credits on the table. The heavy sound silenced the room. The auctioneer opened the pouch, his eyes widening. The payment was real, with a sneer. The auctioneer waved his hand. The guards unlocked the cage. The girl flinched at the sound. Expecting pain, chains fell loose, but she did not move. Her body trembled as fear kept her frozen. The human stepped closer. His voice was calm, not cruel. "Come." The girl lifted her head slowly. Her eyes were hollow. Filled with fear and disbelief, she whispered, almost too soft to hear. "Why, me?" The human crouched, his gaze steady. "Because no one else would." The words cut through the noise of the hall. For the first time, the girl blinked in confusion. The crowd muttered, some angry, some mocking, but none dared to stop him. The human helped her to her feet. She stumbled, weak and unsteady. Together they walked through the hall. The laughter of the crowd followed them. But the human ignored it. His hand stayed close. Guiding her forward, behind them the empty cage stood in silence. It had held the worthless one, but now it was open. For the girl, the cage was no longer her world. Ahead waited something she could not yet understand. Choice. The market was still noisy even after the last cage had been dragged away. The smell of metal and sweat filled the air. Alien traders counted their credits and laughed as they spoke about profits. But in the corner, the human stood still with calm eyes. His gaze stayed on the girl left behind. The alien auctioneer raised his voice. "She is worthless, skin-scarred, bones weak. No use for work or pleasure." The crowd laughed. Some even threw shells at the cage. The girl did not react. She had stopped reacting long ago. Her eyes were empty like broken glass, yet the human did not look away. He stepped closer. The guards frowned at him, thinking maybe he was lost. But he simply pointed at the girl, his voice steady. "I will buy her." For a moment, silence covered the hall. Then laughter exploded. A group of lizard-skinned merchants slapped their tails against the ground in mockery. "Human fool, why waste your coins on that trash?" One hissed, a taller insect alien buzzed with laughter. "She cannot even walk straight, you must enjoy garbage." The auctioneer sneered. "Human, do you know what you are asking? You can have fresh, strong stock for the same price. This one is nothing, a broken tool." But the human pulled out his pouch and set it on the table. The sound of credits clinking filled the air. It was not a small amount. He paid the full price without haggling. His eyes never left the girl, the traders whispered. Some were confused, some angry. For them, slaves were numbers, value, and strength. For him, this was different. "He must be crazy," one muttered. Another shook his head. "Or maybe humans are soft. They keep pets out of pity." The cage door creaked open. The girl stepped back in fear. She thought it was another cruel game. Her thin arms covered her face, expecting a strike. But instead of pain, she heard a gentle voice. Come. She lowered her arms slowly. The human was standing there, not with chains, but with open hands. His eyes did not burn with greed or cruelty. They carried something she could not understand. She whispered with a dry throat. Why, me? The human crouched slightly, his voice quiet enough only for her to hear. Because no one else would. The words struck her like fire in cold veins. She had been told she was useless, worthless, nothing. And yet this stranger had spent his wealth to claim her, not as a prize, not as a tool, but as a choice. The guard shoved her out of the cage. The human stepped between them and the girl. His hand raised in warning, his gaze sharp. The guards paused, unsure why his stare felt heavier than steel. Together they walked away. The girl stumbled, her legs weak. The human slowed his pace so she could keep up. No laughter followed them now, only whispers and uneasy eyes. The traders were not laughing anymore. Some felt insulted, some felt suspicious. Outside the auction hall, the cold wind blew across the dusty street. The girl looked at the stars above, her heart beating fast for the first time in years. The cage was behind her. She was still chained by fear, but now a strange thought began to grow. Maybe she was not worthless after all. The road outside the alien market was dark and filled with shadows. The human walked steadily, while the girl followed a few steps behind. Her bare feet touched the cold ground. Each step felt heavy, as if invisible chains still held her ankles. She did not understand why this human had bought her in her mind. One thought echoed again and again, worthless. She had heard that word so many times that it had become her name. She had no title, no family, no freedom. Just a forgotten slave in a forgotten cage. The human finally stopped near a small lighted stall at the edge of the street. He turned to her. Hungry? His voice was calm, almost gentle. She looked at him with disbelief. Slaves were not asked questions. They were ordered, beaten, or ignored. But this human waited for her answer. Her lips moved slowly, unsure if she should speak. I don't know, she whispered. The human nodded and bought food anyway. He gave her a small bowl, steam rising from it. The smell was rich and warm. Something she had never tasted. She hesitated, thinking maybe it was a cruel trick. Eat, he said simply. Her shaking hands lifted the bowl. The first bite burned her tongue, but she did not stop. Tears rolled down her cheeks as the warmth filled her chest. She tried to hide it, but the sob escaped. She covered her mouth in shame, afraid he would strike her for showing weakness. But the human only watched silently. His eyes showed no anger, only patience. For the first time in years, she tasted real food, not scraps thrown to animals, not cold leftovers, but food bought for her. Each bite broke something inside her, something hard and frozen. She wanted to ask him again, why me? But her voice refused to rise. When the bowl was empty, she placed it on the ground. Her body trembled from the sudden flood of energy. Her mind still whispered the same word, worthless. Yet the warmth in her stomach fought against it. The human crouched near her. What is your name? The question froze her. She had never been asked before. She searched her memory, but there was nothing. No family, no voice calling her by name. The slavers only called her trash, a broken or thing. I don't have one, she whispered. Her eyes lowered, ashamed. The human nodded slowly. Then I will give you one. He paused as if searching for the right sound. From now on, you are Kale. The word felt strange. Soft yet strong, she repeated it in her head. Kale, her lips moved, Kale. For the first time, she spoke a word that belonged to her. Not a chain, not an insult, but a name. Her chest tightened. She wanted to cry again, but held it back. She did not know why this human was doing this. Was he kind, or was it another game of cruelty? Her heart could not believe. But her body wanted to trust. The human stood again, his eyes on the dark street ahead. Kyle, stay close to me, she followed. Her steps still weak, but now guided by something new. The word echoed inside her like a spark in the dark. She was still the worthless one to everyone else, but to him, she had a name. The night air was cold. The human walked with steady steps while Kale trailed behind him. Every sound of the city seemed sharp to her ears, the clatter of hooves, the hiss of steam pipes, the laughter of merchants who had made their profits. None of it felt real. It was as if she was still in the cage, dreaming of freedom she could never touch. But the name echoed inside her chest. Kale. It repeated again and again like a heartbeat. For years she had been called thing, worthless, or nothing at all. Now she carried a word that felt heavy and strange. It belonged to her. The human stopped at a small inn hidden between tall buildings. The door creaked as he pushed it open. Warm light spilled out. The smell of baked bread and burning wood filled the air. Kale froze. She had never entered a place like this before. Slaves were kept in pens not allowed in homes. The innkeeper, an alien with 4 eyes, frowned at the sight of her. His voice dripped with disgust. Why bring that broken one here? She will scare the guests. The human's voice was calm but firm. She stays with me. His tone carried no room for argument. The innkeeper muttered curses but handed him a key. Kale followed the human upstairs. Her heart pounded. She expected chains, a corner on the floor, or harsh commands, but instead, he opened the room, lit a lamp, and set a blanket on the bed. Then he turned to her and said, "Rest." She blinked, confused. Her mind whispered warnings. Nothing came without cost. She backed into the wall, trembling. "What do you want from me?" she asked, her voice cracked like dry wood. The human looked at her with steady eyes. "Nothing," he replied. Her knees weakened. She had no idea how to answer. Slavers always wanted something: work, obedience, silence, sometimes worse. But this man asked for nothing, offered warmth, and gave her a name. It made no sense. He sat by the table in the corner, removing a small device from his pouch. Lights blinked across its surface. He seemed lost in thought. Kale curled against the wall, pulling the blanket around herself. The softness of it shocked her. She had never felt cloth so warm. Her eyes watered again, slowly. She whispered the word, "Kyle." She repeated it, testing it on her tongue. The sound filled the small room. She almost smiled, but quickly hid it behind the blanket, afraid he might see and laugh. The human looked up, his expression unreadable, but his voice steady. "Names matter. They mean you are more than a number." Kale's chest ached. No one had ever spoken to her like that. She touched her thin wrist where a slave brand still burned. For so long she had been a number carved in flesh. Now a human stranger said she was something else. That night Kyle did not sleep much. Every time she closed her eyes, she remembered the cage, the laughter, the word worthless. Yet each time she whispered her new name, the chains in her mind loosened just a little. By dawn the city outside was waking. The human rose and checked his gear. Kale sat quietly waiting, unsure what would happen, unsure if the strange kindness would vanish, but when he looked at her and said, "Come." "Kale?" Something inside her shifted for the first time in her life. She was not being ordered as a slave, she was being invited. The morning sun crept through the cracked shutters. Kale sat on the floor near the bed. Hugging her knees, she had not slept much. Her mind circled the same question again and again. Why had the human bought her? The human stood by the window, fastening his belt and checking a small blade. His movements were steady, disciplined. He glanced at her and spoke in his calm tone. "Come. We need food." Her stomach twisted at the word. She had eaten only scraps for years, food thrown into cages like waste. The thought of walking into a place filled with people made her chest tighten. But she obeyed silently, following him down the creaky stairs. The inn's common hall was already busy. Merchants shouted their orders, travelers laughed loudly. The air was thick with the smell of roasted grain and spiced meat. Kale froze at the doorway. Her body shook as dozens of eyes turned toward her, some filled with disgust, some with pity, others with mocking smirks. "Why bring her here?" One alien muttered, "She'll spoil the air." Another sneered. A small group laughed, covering their mouths with clawed hands. Kyle lowered her head, waiting for the blow, waiting for the human to push her aside. But instead he placed his hand gently on her shoulder. Guiding her toward a table, his voice was steady. "Ignore them." She sat down awkwardly, her back stiff. The wooden chair felt too soft, too safe. Her hands trembled on the table as if she expected someone to chain them down. The human called for food. The innkeeper scowled but brought 2 plates, one steaming with bread and roasted meat, the other with a bowl of hot broth. The smell was overwhelming. Kale's stomach growled loudly. She quickly pressed her hands against it. Ashamed, the human slid the bowl toward her. "Eat." Kyle stared at it, her throat tight. The steam carried warmth into her face. She looked around. Everyone was watching. Some were laughing already, she whispered. "This is not for me." The human's eyes locked on hers, steady as stone. "Yes, it is." Her hands shook as she lifted the spoon. She dipped it into the broth, raised it slowly, and tasted the first sip. The warmth spread through her body like fire after years of ice. Her chest tightened, her eyes burned. She swallowed quickly and took another spoonful, then another, faster and faster until tears blurred her sight. The hall went silent, watching the worthless slave eat like she had been starved for eternity. Kale tried to stop, but the hunger was stronger. Soon the bowl was empty. She placed it down with trembling hands. Tears rolling freely down her cheeks, she whispered, "I'm sorry," afraid she had done wrong. But the human shook his head, his voice calm. "Never apologize for needing to live." The words hit her harder than any whip. No one had ever told her that survival was not a sin. For years she had been punished for being weak, punished for eating too slowly, punished for being alive, and now this human told her it was right to exist. Kale wiped her face with the back of her hand. She could not look at him. Her heart pounded with confusion, fear, and something else she did not yet understand. Around them whispers grew. "Why feed her? Humans are strange, he wastes food on trash." But the human ignored them all. He stood, placed a few coins on the table, and looked at her. "Come." "Kale." She rose slowly, her legs felt weak, but her chest carried warmth stronger than hunger. For the first time she had eaten like a person, not an animal, and deep inside, a dangerous thought was born. Maybe she was not worthless, maybe she was something more. The road outside the inn was quieter than the noisy market. Kale walked close behind the human, her thin hands clutching the edges of the blanket he had given her. The warmth of the meal still rested in her stomach, but her mind was not calm. Her heart kept whispering the same question. Why? They moved through narrow alleys where alien children played with scraps. Kale stopped for a moment when she saw them laugh. A strange ache filled her chest. She could not remember the sound of her own laughter. Not even as a child, the human noticed her pause. He slowed down, his voice steady. "Do you remember anything before the cage?" Kale froze, her throat tightened. The question was simple, but it struck deep. Memories stirred inside her. Memories she had locked away to survive. She shook her head quickly. "No," she whispered. But her trembling voice betrayed her. He did not press further. They continued walking until they reached a small clearing outside the city walls. The human set down his pack and sat on a broken stone. He gestured for her to sit too. She lowered herself carefully, her body tense. Silence stretched between them. Only the wind carried the dust. At last, Kale whispered, "I had a family once." Her voice cracked like dry wood. The human did not interrupt. He waited, patient as stone. Her hands shook as she pulled the blanket tighter. "They came at night, the raiders. They burned our home, they killed the strong. They sold the rest. I was small, so they threw me in a cage. I never saw my family again." Her chest heaved with each word. Her eyes stared at the ground. Afraid to meet his. "They told me I was weak. They told me no one would ever want me." After years of hearing it, I believed them. She pressed her hands over her face. I thought, maybe they were right. The human's voice was calm, but his words were sharp. "They lied." Kale looked up slowly, her eyes wide, her lips trembled. "How do you know?" "Because I chose you," he said simply. His tone carried no doubt, no hesitation. Her breath caught. The words wrapped around her like a shield. Still, she shook her head. "But I am broken." His gaze was steady. "Broken things can still be precious." Kale's eyes blurred with tears. She wanted to believe him, but fear still chained her heart. She remembered the laughter of the slavers, the mocking voices of the crowd, the whispers of worthless. How could one human's voice erase years of cruelty? She whispered again, almost to herself, "I am Kale." The name sounded fragile, but it was real for the first time. She wanted to hold on to it. The human stood, slinging his pack over his shoulder. "Your past is not your chain, Kale, it is your fire." She rose slowly, her legs weak but her chest strangely strong. She followed him down the dusty path, the city shrinking behind them. Each step carried her farther from the cage, closer to something she could not yet name. That night, as they rested under the open stars, Kale lay awake. The human slept nearby, his hand resting on his blade, his breathing calm, steady. She whispered into the darkness, words no one else would hear. "I don't want to be worthless anymore." The stars above seemed to shimmer in answer. For the first time in her life, her past felt like a story, not a sentence. The stars above were fading when the human and Kale reached the edge of the forest. The road behind them was empty, but the human's eyes kept scanning the shadows. His instincts whispered danger. He had been watched since they left the market. Kale walked close, her blanket dragging across the dirt. She felt lighter after speaking of her past, but now unease filled her chest. The human's silence was heavier than stone. They rested near a stream. The human crouched to fill a flask with water. That was when he heard it, the faint snap of a branch. His hand moved to his blade without a word. His eyes narrowed at the darkness between the trees. Kale followed his gaze. Her heart raced. Shadows moved where no wind blew. Then voices echoed harsh and mocking. Human fool. From the forest, 4 alien hunters stepped out. Their armor marked them as servants of the market. They carried spears tipped with glowing edges. One hissed through sharp teeth. The masters want their property back. Kale froze. Her chest tightened as if invisible chains wrapped around her again. She stumbled backward, whispering, "They came for me." The human stood slowly, his blade gleaming in the faint light. His stance was calm but firm. "She is not your property." The hunters laughed. "Do you think one human can fight us all?" Another sneered. They spread out, circling, their eyes full of cruel hunger. Kale trembled. Her mind screamed to run, but her legs would not move. The memory of cages crushed her lungs. She whispered, "Leave me, please, if I go. They will not kill you." But the human's voice cut through her panic like steel. "Kale, you are not going back!" The hunters lunged. Spears flashing, the human moved fast. His blade struck the first weapon aside, sparks flew. He drove his shoulder into the attacker's chest, sending him crashing into the dirt. Kale gasped. The sight burned into her mind. This was not a slaver beating a helpless captive. This was a human standing against the market itself. Another hunter swung his spear. The human twisted, slicing through the shaft. The weapon snapped. The alien hissed in rage, claws reaching. The human's elbow cracked against his jaw, dropping him to the ground. The third hunter grabbed Kale's arm. She screamed, struggling. Her thin hands clawed at his grip. Fear surged, but then something inside her sparked. A heat, small but real. Her skin glowed faintly where he touched her. The hunter cried out as if burned and released her. Kale stumbled back, staring at her own hands. The glow faded quickly, leaving only trembling fingers. The human caught sight of it but said nothing. His focus stayed on the last attacker. The leader hissed, "She is cursed. That is why no one wanted her. That is why she was left behind." His words dripped poison, meant to break her. But Kale heard another voice in her mind. The human's steady tone. Broken things can still be precious. With a roar, the human's blade slashed across the leader's spear, sending it flying into the stream. The hunter staggered. The human pressed forward, forcing him back until he fled into the trees. The others crawled after him, beaten and humiliated. Silence returned to the forest. Kale collapsed to her knees, her breath ragged, her heart still racing. She looked at the human with wide eyes. Why risk your life for me?" He wiped his blade clean and met her gaze. "Because they were wrong about you." Her chest tightened. Her hands still tingled with the strange spark. She realized the market wanted her gone, not because she was worthless, but because she was dangerous. That night, as the fire crackled, Kale whispered to herself, "Maybe I am not weak." For the first time, she dared to believe it. The forest was quiet again, but Kale could not forget the glow that had burst from her hands. She sat near the fire, staring at her trembling fingers. The human sharpened his blade calmly. His face unreadable, at last she whispered, "What happened to me?" Her voice was small, almost afraid of the answer. The human looked at her. "Something inside you woke up." His tone was steady. Without fear, Kyle hugged the blanket tighter. "The slavers said I was cursed. Maybe they were right." The human shook his head. "Cursed things do not burn chains, they break them." His words left her silent. Her chest ached with confusion. She wanted to believe, but the memories of mockery still weighed heavy. The next morning they moved deeper into the wilds. Birds cried above the trees, streams ran cold and clear. For a moment Kale almost felt free, but the weight of the night before clung to her. She kept looking at her hands at times when her fear spiked. A faint shimmer would flicker across her skin. It vanished quickly, but she felt it like a spark trapped beneath her flesh. The human noticed. He slowed his steps. "Do not fear it," he said. "Strength does not ask permission. It grows when needed," Kyle whispered. "But what if it hurts you?" He looked at her with calm eyes. "Then I will endure it." His certainty unsettled her. No one had ever accepted her without condition. It scared her more than cruelty because it gave her hope. By midday they reached a ruined watchtower, its stones half buried in moss. The human decided they would rest there. He guided Kale inside. The air was damp, filled with echoes of the past. As they settled, Kale's chest tightened again. She remembered the hunter's grip, the burn of his touch, the spark that had answered. She whispered, "It felt like fire, but it was me." The human studied her carefully. "It is part of you, not a curse, a gift." Her eyes widened. "A gift?" "Yes," he said firmly. "The market tried to bury it. That is why they called you worthless. They feared what you could become." The word struck her deeper than any blade. Could it be true? Had her whole life in the cage been a lie to hide her value? That night, as darkness spread across the forest, she dreamed of fire and chains. In the dream, her hands burned bright. The chains melted away, and voices screamed in fear. She woke with a gasp, sweat dripping down her face. The human was awake, watching the fire. He looked at her calmly. "Dreams show us the truth we deny." Kale pressed her hands together. They still tingled faintly. She whispered, "If this is strength, I don't know if I can carry it," he answered. "That is why I am here." She stared at him, unable to speak. For so long she had carried only chains and silence. Now someone wanted to carry the weight with her. The forest winds whispered through the ruined tower. Kale lay back down, her heart heavy yet burning with new heat. The word worthless no longer fit in her chest. Something else was growing there, something fierce, something alive. The morning fog curled around the ruins like pale smoke. Kale stood at the edge of the tower, her hands pressed together. Her chest still carried the memory of the strange fire. It frightened her, yet it also called to her. The human watched her quietly. His calm eyes studied her as if he had already guessed something. After a long silence, he said, "Kyle, do you know who you truly are?" Her heart stilled. She shook her head. "I am no one. Just a slave who was left behind." The human's voice was steady. "No, you were hidden, not abandoned." She frowned, confusion deep in her eyes. "Hidden? Why?" The human stood and reached into his pack. He pulled out a small device, its surface flickering with pale light. A projection bloomed in the air, showing symbols and records taken from the slaver's archives. Kyle gasped. Her name, or rather the name she now carried, was there. Next to words she could not read, the human translated slowly. "Lineage, House of Althar." Her knees weakened. The name stirred something faint in her memory, like a lullaby heard long ago. "Althar," she whispered. The human nodded. "Your people were not weak, they were rulers once. Their blood carried power. That spark inside you is not a curse. It is heritage." Kale shook her head violently. "No, that cannot be true. If I was of a great house, why would I be in chains?" His expression hardened. "Because fear is stronger than chains. The market feared what you might become, so they branded you worthless. They hid your truth so no one would see your value." Her breath came fast. Her hands shook as she clutched the blanket around her. Memories rushed back, the night of fire, the raiders, the voice of her mother shouting her name as she was dragged away. She had forgotten that voice, but now it returned like thunder. Tears burned down her face. I was not nothing." The human's voice was low but firm. "You were never nothing." Kale fell to her knees, her chest heaving. For so many years she had carried the word worthless. Now it cracked apart, revealing something she could not yet grasp. The human crouched beside her, his hand resting gently on her shoulder. "The slavers wanted you broken, but you are not broken. You are the last of your house, and that means you are dangerous to them." She raised her tear-streaked face to him. "Dangerous? How?" His gaze was sharp. "Because hope is dangerous. If the galaxy learns that one of Althar's blood still lives, it could ignite rebellion. Entire worlds could rise against the markets. All because of you." The weight of his words pressed down on her. Kale's body trembled. She wanted to deny it, to crawl back into the silence she knew, but deep inside the spark burned brighter. The fire that had answered the hunter's grip now pulsed stronger. She whispered, "Then they will never stop hunting me." The human's expression did not change. "Then I will never stop protecting you." Her throat closed. She stared at him as if seeing him for the first time. Not as a rescuer, not as a master, but as someone who had chosen her against all reason. The morning fog lifted slowly, revealing the world beyond the trees. Kale wiped her tears with shaking hands. The truth was heavy, but for the first time, she wanted to carry it. She whispered to herself, "I am Kale of Althar. The name did not break her, it gave her strength. The human stood at her side, his voice steady. And the galaxy will soon remember it. The forest air grew tense as word of the failed hunters spread through the markets. Kale and the human moved farther from the city, but they both knew the slavers would not stop. They would send more, stronger, and in greater numbers. Kale walked beside him, her blanket pulled close. Her mind repeated the truth she had learned. Kale of Althar. It felt strange, heavy, but no longer empty. Still fear twisted inside her. They will come again, she whispered. The human nodded. Yes, and when they do, we will not run. His calm voice unsettled her. We? You could leave me, you could be safe. He stopped, turning to her with eyes sharp as steel. Safe does not matter. What matters is choice. I chose you. Her chest tightened. For years she had been forced, ordered, chained. Now someone chose her freely. That choice burned brighter than fear by nightfall. They reached an abandoned outpost built on a ridge. The human set traps along the path, his hand steady. Kyle watched silently. Her body trembled with both dread and a strange energy. That spark inside her was restless. She could feel it more strongly with each passing hour. As the moon rose, the sound of marching boots echoed through the valley. Dozens of hunters approached. Armored and armed, their leader shouted, "Return the girl, human, and we will let you live." Kyle froze. Her heart pounded in her ears, she whispered, "There are too many." The human's blade gleamed in the moonlight. His stance unshaken. "Then we fight until none stand." The hunters surged forward. Spears and claws flashing, the human met them head-on. His blade struck with deadly precision. Every swing carried resolve. Kyle watched in terror as more closed in. His strength was great, but they were endless. One hunter broke past him and lunged at her. Kyle screamed. Her fear erupted into fire. Her hands blazed with the same glow as before. The air cracked with energy. The hunter flew backward, his armor scorched. Kale stared at her burning hands, fear mixed with awe. The human glanced back at her and shouted, "Do not fear it, use it," the hunters roared. Charging again, Kale's body shook, but the spark inside answered. Flames of light burst from her palms, sweeping across the ridge. The ground trembled as her power struck. Several hunters fell screaming, their weapons shattered. The slavers shouted in panic, "She lives!" "The bloodline lives," Kale's voice rose above the chaos, trembling yet fierce. "I am Kale of Althar." The words carried power, not weakness. The hunters hesitated. Fear spread among them. The human pressed the attack, his blade flashing as he drove them back. One by one they broke, retreating into the night. Silence returned at last. Kyle collapsed to her knees, her chest heaving. The fire on her hands faded. She looked at the human with wide, tearful eyes. I did it." He sheathed his blade and knelt beside her, his voice calm but full of weight. "No, Kale, we did it together." Her lips trembled. She wanted to speak, but no words came. Instead, she let the truth sink in. She was no longer a number, no longer worthless. She was someone chosen, someone who carried fire. The stars shone bright above the ridge. The human looked at them, his voice steady. "The galaxy will hunt us now, but let them come. This was my gamble, and I will stand by it." Kale lifted her head, her heart beating with new strength. "Then I will stand with you." In that moment, a slave and a human became something more. Not master and servant, not savior and victim, but allies bound by choice. The cage was behind her, and the future waited before them, burning bright.